My name's Owen Bailey, and I used to think city life was the worst thing in the world. You know, traffic jams, paper-thin apartment walls, the constant hum of people shouting, engines roaring, sirens at all hours. That kind of noise burrows into your skull. After a while, you stop noticing it, but it's still there, drilling away at your nerves, day after day. I grew up in Portland, lived there my whole life, but I was never, I don't know, built for it. My friends called me old-fashioned. They were content with weekend hikes and overpriced coffee. Me? I wanted something more permanent. I wanted real quiet. Space. I guess you could call it running away, but it didn't feel that way at the time. It felt like waking up. So when I turned 30, I did what most people only dream about after one too many beers. I sold everything that didn't fit in the back of my truck. Old clothes, the TV, furniture. I dipped into what little savings I had left from my dad's life insurance, and I bought land. 6 acres of untouched forest land, way up in the northern corner of Idaho. Locals called it Dead Pine Ridge. I still remember the way the realtor laughed when I signed the papers. Said, "You'll have peace out there, all right? Just you and the bears." I thought she was joking. The land sat along the base of the Selkirk Mountains, thick with pine and cedar, jagged ridges that clawed at the clouds, and dirt roads that turned to frozen rivers of ice every winter. No neighbors for miles. No cell reception. Not even power lines. It was perfect. I bought a yurt, one of those big canvas domes with a wooden frame, hauled it out there in the back of my truck. Took me weeks to set it up properly, with stove in the middle, tiny solar panels set up for lights, rain barrels, a composting toilet. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I spent the first month in pure bliss. Woke up every morning to the sound of wind through the trees. The cold mountain air hit my lungs like medicine. Days passed chopping firewood, hiking the ridges, watching deer pick their way through the underbrush. At night, the stars looked close enough to touch. A whole blanket of them, brighter than I'd ever seen. It wasn't just peaceful, it was healing. I stopped checking my phone, stopped worrying about news, deadlines, other people's problems. It was just me, the forest, and the quiet. I even started keeping a journal, something I hadn't done since I was a kid. Scribbling down how many deer tracks I spotted, where I thought the best fishing spots might be come spring, little notes about the land. I even wrote how proud I was, finally living how I always wanted. Funny how quickly that feeling turns. I should have paid more attention to the locals. Dead Pine Ridge wasn't just a name. It was a warning. But by the time I realized that, it was already too late. It started with the tracks. About 6 weeks in, the snow came early. Heavy, wet flakes piled up fast, coating the ground in a thick white blanket. I wasn't worried. I'd stocked enough firewood and supplies to last through winter. Honestly, I was looking forward to the stillness of it. But that morning, when I stepped outside to Splitwood, I saw them. Massive paw prints, sunk deep in the fresh snow, no more than 20 feet from my yurt. At first, I thought maybe it was a black bear. They wander this area sometimes, especially before hibernation. But these tracks, they weren't right. They were too wide, too long. The claws dug deep, far deeper than any bear I'd seen in those nature books. And there was something else. The tracks didn't meander like a curious animal. They circled, tight, deliberate loops around my camp, around the firewood pile, around the yurt itself, like it had been watching me. I didn't panic. Not yet. Told myself animals get curious. Maybe it was a big grizzly passing through. It happens. I reinforced the doors, stacked more firewood, kept the rifle loaded, leaning against the bedroll at night. But the signs didn't stop. The next evening, I found claw marks along the trees, high up, nearly 7 feet off the ground. Deep, ugly gouges in the bark. Every night after that, I'd hear movement in the woods. Heavy steps crunching through the snow. Slow, purposeful. Once, I swore I saw eyes, low to the ground at first, glowing faint in the moonlight beyond the tree line. But they rose, higher, until they hovered almost 8 feet off the ground. Then they disappeared into the black. That's when I stopped sleeping properly. I kept the fire going constantly. I barely left camp, just chopping wood and watching the ridge. Waiting, listening. The locals at the little town an hour down the mountain. They'd warned me, kind of. Said Dead Pine Ridge had stories. Old ones. Talk of things that roamed there. Things that weren't supposed to. But I'd laughed it off like everyone else. The weird thing was, no one came up that way. Even the snowmobile trails, the logging roads, all untouched. It was like people avoided the ridge altogether. I didn't understand why, not yet. Then came the carcass. A deer, torn to shreds, left right at the edge of my camp. Blood frozen into the snow, ribs cracked wide like a twisted offering, but no prints around it. No drag marks. It was just there, dropped like a message. And suddenly, I wasn't so sure this was about a bear anymore. I always dreamed of living off the grid, away from the noise, the traffic, the endless chatter of city life. That's why I packed up everything I owned and moved to a tiny cabin deep in the forest of Montana, about 30 miles from the nearest town called Granite Hollow. It's peaceful out here. The tall cedar trees sway in the wind. There's a freshwater creek that runs behind my cabin, and I grow my own food, collect rainwater, and run everything off solar panels. For nearly a year, it was perfect. Quiet. Free. Exactly what I wanted. But all that changed one cold autumn morning. I was out gathering firewood, my axe slung over my shoulder, about 100 yards from the cabin. The ground was covered in pine needles, and everything smelled damp and earthy. That's when I noticed it, a patch of dirt that looked disturbed, like someone had been digging recently and tried to cover it back up. At first, I figured it was just an animal, maybe a coyote or badger. But curiosity got the better of me. I went back to the shed, grabbed my shovel, and started digging. About 2 feet down, my shovel hit something solid, metal. My heart started pounding as I cleared the dirt away. It was an old, rusted box, about the size of a suitcase. I forced it open with the shovel. Inside, that's when the unease truly set in. A handgun, a full box of ammunition, duct tape, a roll of zip ties, a large hunting knife, and a folded map. The map had red X's marked all over it, one of them right near my cabin. There was also a notebook, small, battered, filled with short, cryptic notes. Observe routines. No mistakes. No witnesses. My stomach twisted. At first, I thought it might be some hunter's hidden stash. But this wasn't for hunting deer. It felt darker than that. I remembered hearing stories back in Granite Hollow, rumors about survivalists, fugitives, even old cases of serial killers burying kill kits in remote places for future use. My skin crawled with the thought. Was whoever buried this still around? Were they watching me right now? I slammed the box shut and looked around. The woods suddenly felt off. Too quiet. The trees pressed in close, the shadows stretched too far. I dragged the box back to my cabin, locked every door and window, something I rarely bothered with out here, and grabbed the emergency satellite phone I kept for situations like this. There's no cell reception out here. Only way to make a call was that old sat phone. I dialed the sheriff's office in Granite Hollow. Sheriff's Department, a calm voice answered. Hi, I need to report something. I found a buried box on my property. It's got a gun, zip ties, duct tape, a knife, and a map with locations marked on it. I think it's dangerous. The deputy on the line asked for my location and the details. His tone shifted when I described the contents. That does sound serious, he said. We'll send someone your way, but it's going to take a couple hours. You're pretty far out. Keep the box secure. Don't touch anything else inside. I agreed, but my gut was screaming at me not to stay alone. Still, this was my home. I wasn't going to run off and leave it wide open. I locked the box in the bedroom closet under blankets, grabbed my hunting rifle, and waited. As night fell, the forest outside grew unnervingly still. Every creak, every rustle made my pulse jump. The sat phone signal was patchy, but I managed to get a call through to Jonas, my friend who lives down in town. Jonas, I found something bad today. I told him, explaining everything. That's messed up, he said. You sure you're okay? You could stay with me until the sheriff checks it out. I can't leave the place unattended. What if whoever buried it comes back? Just be careful, all right? If anything feels off, promise me you'll leave. I said I would, but honestly, I wasn't sure I meant it. I wasn't going to let fear drive me out. Hours passed. I sat by the window, rifle in hand, lantern turned low. The only sound was the wind whispering through the trees. Then, I heard it. The distinct snap of a twig. Footsteps, slow, steady, outside the cabin. My heart hammered in my chest. I killed the lantern and crept to the window, peering into the dark. I couldn't see anyone, but I knew they were there. A moment later, the porch creaked under someone's weight. The doorknob jiggled. I froze. Again, another jiggle. Then, a hard slam against the door. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice shaking. "I've got a gun." The banging stopped. Silence. Then, a voice. Low, rough, way too close to the door. "Give me back what's mine, and I'll leave you alone." My blood turned ice. It was him, whoever buried the box. I gripped the rifle tighter. "The police are on their way," I said, trying to sound steady. "You should leave now." A pause. Then the voice again, colder. "You're bluffing. Ain't no police gonna make it here in time." Suddenly, another crash against the door, harder this time. The wood cracked near the hinges. I aimed the rifle above the door frame, where I knew he wasn't standing, and fired a warning shot. The blast shattered the silence, echoing through the trees. A yell. Footsteps pounding off the porch, fading into the woods. I locked the door tighter, heart racing, and waited. The sheriff didn't arrive for nearly 3 more hours. They searched the area, but the stranger was long gone. I handed over the buried box, gave my statement, and agreed to stay with Jonas for a few days. I still live off-grid, but I learned that even out here, even in the deep, quiet woods, you're never truly alone. I used to work the graveyard shift at a rundown truck stop along Route 56, smack in the middle of the Arizona desert. It wasn't exactly a dream job, but it paid the bills. Most nights were dead quiet. Occasionally, a trucker or two would roll through for gas or stale coffee, but after midnight, it was mostly just me, the hum of the flickering fluorescent lights, and the endless stretch of desert outside. The kind of silence that gets under your skin if you let it. It was during one of those long, lonely nights that I saw it. I remember the clock behind the register flashing 2:13 a.m. when the rumble of a semi echoed across the lot. I glanced outside and saw the headlights cutting through the darkness, the familiar outline of a big rig pulling into one of the parking bays. Nothing unusual, at least not at first glance. But after a few minutes passed and no one got out, I started to feel uneasy. I watched through the window. The engine kept idling, exhaust curling into the cold desert air. The headlights stayed on, glaring out into the empty lot. But the cab door never opened. No movement, no sound but the steady purr of the diesel engine. After 10 minutes of that, I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside. The desert night hit me like a wall, crisp, dry, and eerily still. Even the crickets were silent. The lot stretched out in front of me, the overhead lamps casting sickly yellow pools of light onto the cracked asphalt. The rig sat parked just beyond the pumps, a faded red Peterbilt with worn chrome trim and dust caked along the fenders. The truck looked old, weathered, the kind of vehicle that had been driven 100,000 miles past its prime. I approached cautiously, the crunch of gravel beneath my boots loud in the quiet. As I got closer, I noticed something off. The windows were fogged, completely clouded from the inside, which didn't make sense considering the dry desert air. I could barely make out a figure slumped in the driver's seat, unmoving. I knocked on the door. "Sir, you all right in there?" No response. I knocked harder, rapping my knuckles against the metal. The engine kept idling, steady as a heartbeat, but the man inside didn't flinch. Concerned, I tried the door handle. It clicked open with unsettling ease. The interior light flickered on, casting a weak yellow glow across the cab, but it was empty. The seat was bare. No driver, no duffel bags, no jacket, nothing. But the keys were still in the ignition, engine running, headlights on. It didn't make sense. I leaned inside, my eyes scanning the cab. The air was cold, unnaturally cold. My breath fogged in front of me, which shouldn't have been possible on a desert night hovering around 80 degrees. And then, that smell hit me. Not diesel, not stale coffee or old upholstery. It was the smell of rot, decay, like something long dead, trapped in the shadows. My pulse quickened. I backed out of the cab, my flashlight beam trembling as I swept it across the empty lot. There were no footprints in the dust, no signs anyone had stepped out of the truck, just the Peterbilt, rumbling quietly, sitting there like a ghost. I hurried back inside and grabbed the store phone. My manager, Rick, lived 15 minutes down the highway, but he always said to call if anything weird happened. When he picked up, I wasted no time. "Rick, you ever see an old red Peterbilt around here? Numbers 2381 painted on the side." There was silence on the line for a long moment. Then his voice, low and flat. "Get away from that truck." I frowned. "What are you?" "Just listen to me," he interrupted. "That rig, it belonged to a man named Eli Cotton, long-haul driver. Good guy, far as anyone knew. He disappeared out here 4 years ago. Left this same truck behind, engine running, doors locked. But he was never found." I glanced back out the window. The Peterbilt still sat there, idling in the lot, empty as a grave. "You saying it's, what? Stolen?" Rick's voice dropped even lower. "That truck shows up every couple of years. Same spot, same time. Cops investigate, but by the time they get there, it's gone. No tracks, no proof, just gone. And every time it shows up, someone around here disappears." A chill ran down my spine. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. "You're serious?" I whispered. "I'm telling you," Rick said. "Get inside. Lock the doors. Don't go near that thing." I didn't argue. I locked the doors, turned off the store lights, sat behind the counter with my eyes fixed on that rig, watching, waiting. Minutes dragged into hours. The lot stayed empty. The engine purred on. And just before dawn, without warning, the Peterbilt was gone. No sound of the engine leaving. No tire marks in the dust. Nothing. It was like it had never been there at all. I quit that job the next day. Never set foot on Route 56 again. And I never worked the graveyard shift. Not for all the money in the world. Because some things out there, they don't stay dead.